Peace, and welcome. We're glad you're here. This is the Cook on Monday Morning podcast. I am here with one of the luminaries of our time. The most hard-hitting power broker in the history of San Francisco.
Oof, what an intro.
A person I consider a mentor and a friend. Welcome, Alex Tourk.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. No, it's good to be here.
Yeah. At Cook on Monday Morning, we believe that if you can own Monday morning, you can own the week. If you can own the week, you can own the year. And if you change your year, you can change your life. And so Alex has a long history in San Francisco politics. He has a long history in solving problems. I want to get into a lot of his story, what he's currently doing now, maybe touch on some issues that he thinks are solvable in the city. He's also the founder of Project Homeless Connect, which has a great brand in the city of San Francisco. And so let's get started.
Yeah, right on. Bring it.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up, Alex?
From New York originally. Grew up with a single mom and an older sister. And then when I was about 7 and my sister was 10, she moved us across the country. So my mom was a secretary for William Morris Agency and got promoted to agent, and so was transferred across the country to LA. So I mainly grew up in Los Angeles, but from New York originally, and most of my family is back in New York.
Okay. Where in New York?
In Manhattan.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. And where in LA did you move to?
In Beverly Hills, California, a little unknown city. I was like, I'm a little older than you are, but there was a show at the time called The White Shadow.
Okay.
And it was about a, group of kids from like Culver City, California, mix of folks. And there was this one guy who was like the loudmouth from New York. His name was Salami. So when I moved across the country, I was immediately like nicknamed this guy Salami. But I loved growing up in LA. I mean, it was, beautiful place to be. Really learned my work ethic from my mom, watching her, just lead groups of people, really. So, loved growing up there, but I knew at 18 I needed to get out of LA. It wasn't everyone wanted to be in the entertainment business in one way or another, which really wasn't the thing for me. And I first visited San Francisco when I was about 14 or 15. And what I remember is, regardless of like the ideological divide, like the one thing, at least back then, that seemed to unite everyone was their love of the city. And I just remember that as a 14-year-old boy, of like this synergy of San Francisco that I knew at some point I was going to make my way here.
Yeah. Loving the city is something I definitely identify with.
Yeah.
So at 18, did you come straight here after that?
No, I went to Boston University.
BU.
BU. I thought I wanted to go to like a smaller, kind of campus type school. And then I really recognized within about 2 or 3 months, like my campus was Boston, which was pretty awesome. I mean, there are 60 colleges in Boston, so you can imagine there's just students everywhere. But I loved being like one of the lone LA guys on the East Coast. That was kind of fun too. And I'm from the East Coast originally, so it was kind of nice to be back in winter. And
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, whatever, man. I knew it was 4 years, right? So, no, it was a great place to go to school, and loved history. I grew up with my mom was very political. She started a group called the Hollywood Women's Political Committee when I was, younger. And so folks like Ted Kennedy and Barbara Jordan were in my living room. And so I was learning about politics at a young age. And so I was kind of always driven to politics, history, public service. So I was a history major thinking that I wanted to be a teacher. Which is what brought me here. Looking back, I knew I wanted to get to San Francisco. Right. So I applied for a teaching credential program at St. Mary's. So looking back, like I just wanted to get here. And I think I thought at the time I had to have it figured out. And looking back, like obviously that wasn't the profession that I went into, but it got me here to San Francisco.
Mm. What are some of the early lessons around like politics or the issues that initially got you passionate about social change? Because those are some really important people you had in your living room.
Yeah, I mean, it probably took me a while to get to that point when it was about social change. I mean, that was probably my days in the mayor's office, to be honest. I mean, I'm still, you brought up Project Homeless Connect. I'm incredibly passionate about solutions to homelessness. But at the beginning, I think what got me excited was the campaign work. There was something about like one of the first major campaigns that I worked on, it felt like being in a play, like meaning you rehearse every day, you love each other one day, you hate each other the next, things are going crazy, but then the curtain goes up and it's showtime, right? And you either get the New York Times review or you're a flop. And there was this energy to winning that I was really drawn to, and it was very family oriented. And I think I kind of recognized my organizational ability. I was always, some people are really good at fundraising. Some people are good at field, and like, that's my thing. Like, I like leading groups of people, and I really kind of built that experience through my campaign work. So, I mean, in terms of when I got passionate about social change is probably when I first realized I could merge politics and policy together. And really that was Homeless Connect, right? I mean, it was organizing a city to say everyone can play a role in this some way, somehow. Right. And so that was the first time I really recognized like my political skills didn't just have to be electing John Smith, supervisor or mayor. I could actually organize larger groups of people around policy change, and that was definitely inspiring.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, we should get into the political stuff then, because I've run 2 races. I'm currently running another one, and you have a lot of experience running races in the city, and I get what you're talking about when it comes to the energy around trying to achieve a political outcome. One of the things that I've sort of centered myself on is keeping myself focused on the activities that I need to do and trying to avoid distractions. What's your impression of that?
Well, no, it's an important lesson that I learned a long time ago, that you can't be the candidate and the campaign manager at the same time. And I've seen many people fail because of that. Because, I mean, again, you need to be the candidate, right? And do what you can do to reach voters and, motivate people, right, to support you. I'm a big believer of kind of pick a couple things and do them really well. And so, at least again, in my experience with my field background, like I would any candidate who comes to see me, like just asking for advice or direction, it could be school board, it could be supervisor, it could be mayor. The first thing I always say is like, I would put 2 lists together that are both 50 deep. One is who would show up to your kickoff. Like if you called them and said, I'm running, I'm going live, I need you standing by my side. Who are those 50 people? Then the other list of 50 is who would write you a check. I mean, unfortunately, it takes money to communicate in politics, right? And so you make that list of 100, and I've seen, I've talked to a number of candidates, right? And some never come back with that list. Some come back with it, and you can tell the potential success by seeing these lists, right? Because at the end of the day, then it's organizing and motivating those lists, right? And so if you have 50 people that are going to stand with you at a kickoff, well, asking all of them to go find 10 friends, now you got 500 supporters, right? And then you just need to stay on top of the 50 versus going one by one all over the district or city or whatever it might be. So it just comes down to brick and mortar organizing as far as I'm concerned. But it's easier said than done.
Yeah, it is easier said than done. And I definitely believe in the power of the list, like the first time I had to do call time.
It's the worst.
and call time, people that don't know, is a candidate calling whoever is on the list to ask them for money, right? Yeah. That's just for, and so, I have a list in front of me and I have the numbers next to the list, and like, I really don't want to pick up the phone, you know? It is like,
hey, by the way, you're not alone. I mean, I have not met many a candidate that enjoys call time, especially when it's call time for money. Like I said, some people are really good at fundraising. Some are good at field. And, you know, I've always been drawn to the field side of things. Like, and sometimes that could be harder to actually ask someone for 3 hours of their time versus writing a check and it's over. Right. But again, like, it's a necessary evil, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, like talking about the psychological, emotional part of calling people, right? Because I never liked it. Once you start, it's not that bad, but it does take, you do have to overcome this very big mental block by like picking up the phone. And the fact that I had to do it and I forced myself to do it, it's kind of like a thing that I expect other people to do. Like, no, I don't enjoy this. Like, you know, if you want to, if I'm going to be serious about backing you, then as another candidate, like you have to be serious about getting past whatever discomfort it is.
That's fair.
To like commit to the process, you know? And so in my races, people have always said, in my school board races, they said that I was a good fundraiser. And I really don't like to do it. I just force myself to commit the time, you know? So it's like, all right, I had these 2 hours blocked out. I'm gonna call for 2 hours. Yeah. And I'm gonna hate it when I start it, but I have to spend the time on doing it, you know? So it's kind of like, I don't know, do you have any interesting stories about, I guess you didn't push candidates to call, right? Were you in those rooms sitting with people?
I mean, I've definitely been in those rooms. And again, it's easier for me to say, right? I mean, I've never put my name on the ballot, so props to you, right? You know, I was always representing another individual. But I mean, you know, I've spent plenty of time calling phone banking where you're asking for support, right? Versus, you know, asking for a financial contribution. But yeah, I mean, again, the majority of candidates that I've worked with and for struggle with that. It's just, but so again, good to you for breaking through that. Because again, at the end of the day, you need to communicate to the broader public, and you can only meet so many people knocking on a door, right? And so, so again, it's I can see why you struggle with it. Yeah. You're not alone.
Yeah. But you more so enjoyed, and you don't really do races as much anymore, right?
No, I stopped doing them. I found myself, so I've owned my company now. I mean, you know, again, I worked, just to give you a little bit of my work history. You know, again, I got into campaigns, and then it's a very small town, right? So I worked for a state assemblyman on the peninsula, a guy named Lou Pappin, who's no longer with us, who was really the first time I was working hand in glove with the principal. Okay. So he was 65, I was 25, old school blue dog Democrat from Massachusetts, like grew up in poverty, you know, made a career for himself. And, you know, that running for the assembly, those districts are big, you know? So this was the 19th AD, which was like Daly City to Foster City. So big territory. And I didn't have a day off for 9 months, like not one day off, because he was basically like, if I'm knocking on a door, you're knocking on it too, right? And it was such a lesson in retail politics. And he was very successful. And so I ran his district office for about 6 years, and then his reelection. But I was living in the city, so I was going down to Millbrae for work, and he really hated going to events. Like, so I was like the guy that did the chicken dinner stuff and the proclamations, and which really helped me like get better at public speaking, essentially. But that led me to Mayor Brown, which led me to Mayor Newsom. And so when I started my company now, like 13 years ago, I'd say about 5 or 6, you know, when you're a small business entrepreneur, you take resources where you can get it. Right. And people wanted to hire me to run their campaigns. It made sense. But again, about like 6 years ago, I probably had like 5 or 6 campaigns in a cycle. And one candidate who shall remain nameless, I caught myself in the mirror like 2 weeks before election day going, I could care less if this guy wins or loses, which is the antithesis of me. Like, excuse me. I mean, I'll take a bullet for my candidate. I'm like blood, sweat, and tears, kind of heart on my sleeve type mentality. And I was kind of recognizing like, why am I feeling this way? And I felt like most of the words and ideas were mine. I was getting yelled at every day. I wasn't making that much money. And did I need to elect, Stevan to the board of supervisors so I could get my client lift a meeting with Supervisor Cook? Like if I hadn't earned that by now, then I was never going to get there. And so I kind of went cold turkey on campaigns, which was very freeing, to be honest. So we're now like a, kind of diverse public affairs firm that works in politics, but we just don't work on individual campaigns. If that makes sense.
Yeah. We have talked about ground floor at all. So you found a ground floor.
Found a ground floor. It was, best move I ever made. Life, takes weird turns. And I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I was a political operative, right? I was like working for a mayor. I thought I was going to work for a governor. I thought I was going to work for a president. It was just going to be my trajectory. And, you get knocked down in life and you get back up. And I had some really good people around me that motivated me to start my own thing, which was very risky at the time. But I look back now and I'm like, it was definitely the greatest move I ever made, because I feel super fortunate that I get up in the morning and I'm excited to go to work. And I've got a team of 10 people that work with and for me. And they're young and they're hungry and they're ambitious and they're talented. And I love going to war with these guys, And so I'm ground floor is like, it's my baby. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Walk me through a little bit of that decision to start. I've had a lot of founders on the show thus far, and everyone's sort of like, people are in different places in their life. They have like personal stuff going on. They have like savings, financial stuff going on, and they have an idea, and so what was it like to go from idea to yes?
Yeah. I mean, again, the formation of my company is pretty unique. Things were pretty high profile and I was going through a tough time in my life. So kind of everyone knew what was going on in my life, right? Which was hard enough. I actually give, Congresswoman Jackie Spear, all the credit in the world. As I went from being a deputy chief of staff and a campaign manager of a mayoral reelect with, 15-minute slots. Like I was busy, and all of a sudden, like I have a free calendar, and she took me to breakfast one morning and was actually like, look, I know you're going through a really hard time, but trust me, start your own thing. People will come. And it really motivated me to be like, if she feels that confident about my abilities and that people are going to want, to see me succeed, why don't I give this a shot? Right. And I didn't know anything about starting a company. Right. So I kind of cobbled it together of, you get 3 clients, you get a logo, you get a website, you get an office,
there you go.
and then you go to work. Right. So it, again, had she not shown that faith and confidence in me, like I don't know that I would have done it. So whenever I run into her, I make sure to remind her that, she was really the reason that I kind of dove in head first and started ground floor.
Yeah, I've actually heard sort of secondary stories about Congresswoman Spears and how she's done that for people, and been like a source of support and like encouraging, and she has like her own like really unique story.
100%.
She was shot
9 times, I might add, at Jonestown. That's one strong
times.
Woman, man. It's something like that. I mean, it was
That's
multiple
crazy.
times. But she's had a lot of struggle in her life. But she's an unbelievable woman. Yeah. And I'm fortunate to know her.
Yeah. And so you went to yes. What was the first moment when you were like, okay, this is for real?
So my first, like I said, cobbling 3 clients together made me feel like, okay, I've got a firm, right? Like I've got 3. And there were a couple stories where at the time, the CEO of CPMC, this was before they built the big hospital in Van Ness, he called me and, I mean, I knew him, but not very well. His name was Dr. Martin Brotman, incredible guy, really thoughtful. And he called me and said, when I hear Alex Tourk is a free agent, like that's a call I'm going to make. So immediately, like I was kind of excited, like, okay, like I'm now putting myself out there. There's one potential. The Giants came around. The All-Star game was here that year, 2007.
Okay.
So they brought me on to kind of organize the small business community and make them feel involved. And then when I really realized, I think that things were going to not be okay, but just like that things were moving in the right direction, is I get a call and it's like, hi, this is Maria Shriver. And I'm like, yeah. And I literally hang up. And she calls right back. She's like, please don't hang up. Like, this is Maria Shriver. And she had heard about the work that we had done on Project Homeless Connect. And she wanted to start something statewide to bring resources to working families in that Connect organizing model. Right. And so all of a sudden, like, I had Maria Shriver as a client and the Giants and CPMC. And it was like, somewhat high profile. So it just kind of made me realize like I could crawl before we walk, and that there was something there, that people did want to work with me, that Jackie was right, and just gave me the confidence to keep going.
Yeah. I was looking at your website like not too long ago, and I've seen you work with a variety of different people. So you went from that 3, and your portfolio of past or existing clients is pretty much like most people that high profile companies that you can think of that has some sort of interplay with San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, again, like I was saying to you earlier, I really try to keep things diverse by design. I don't want to be pigeonholed as the tech guy or the real estate guy or whatever it might be. And in fact, we've got this amazing portfolio of nonprofits. I mean, we worked with Glide, we're working with Goodwill, Larkin Street, Life Learning Academy, ECS. I mean, like these incredible organizations that are kind of doing God's work.
Right.
Health Rate 360, absolutely. So it's really rewarding, and it's nice that day to day the issues change, right? Like it's, one day I'm dealing with homelessness, the next day I'm dealing with tech, the next day we're trying to entitle a project. I mean, it constantly moves. But I'd say once I decided to stop doing campaigns, I still recognize that campaign experience is a great selling point to what we do, right? Meaning if I'm sitting with a prospective client and they're thinking about hiring us, I will always say to that prospective client, well, what does your election day look like? So if you bring us on for 3 months or 6 months or a year, what is election day? And some are easier than others, right? I mean, a real estate developer is like, I want my project entitled, like no brainer. But when I'm talking to a nonprofit director who thinks they need our services for whatever reason, and I see their wheels turning around what is their election day. And I remember one time ED of a nonprofit, she looked a little shy. And I was like, go ahead. Like, there's no wrong answer, right? She said, I want to be known as a thought leader in San Francisco. And I'm like, all right, like, good for you for like getting that out there. Now let's reverse engineer a plan. Let's get you on panels. Let's get an op-ed in the Chronicle. Let's do this or that, right? And using that like campaign model really gets people to understand, again, things will go up, things will go down, but like, where do we want to go? Yeah. And I can't remember the last time I wrote a scope of work that I needed to like check it. Like, what am I supposed to do for this client? Like once we've got synergy on it, it's pretty clear, right?
That's a good question. What does your election day look like?
Yeah.
Have you, I wanted to talk about, have you seen Hustle and Flow?
Oh yeah. I love that movie.
Okay. All right. There's a scene in the movie.
Didn't expect you going there, but right on.
Well, I mean, I want to get into hip hop too, so I know you follow stuff related to
you have seen me culture. Walking down the street, checking what I'm listening to on Spotify, right?
Yeah. So, have you worked with Spotify?
No, I wish. I mean, I listen to it all the time.
Yeah. Spotify, holler at Alex.
But I'm always listening to 90s hip hop, so it doesn't I'm not listening to the new stuff.
Well, I was going to bring up Michael Clayton. The movie Michael Clayton.
Okay.
Have you seen that one with?
Yeah, it was with George Clooney. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
But no, Hustle and Flow. You're
Hustle and
giving
Flow.
me
Because I was going to
reference.
compare you to Michael Clayton, but then I was thinking about the scene from Hustle and Flow. And so if you haven't seen Hustle and Flow, it's a movie about a pimp that is trying to break into music. It was like it won Oscars. It was like the celebrated film, and the rapper Ludacris has a cameo in the movie, and the main character is trying to become a rapper, and so that's what's the dude's name? I forget the guy's name. The main character, Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard. Yeah. So Terrence Howard gives.
I'm dying to hear where this is going to connect with me, man. It's fantastic.
So all right, so Terrence Howard gives Ludacris
his tape,
and then Ludacris says to Terrence Howard, "We all got a dream." And then he proceeds to go to the restroom and wipe himself with the guy's tape. Has a client ever come to you and you said, "We all got a dream,"
but I can't help you.
But you have like what they're asking for is like so preposterous or like insane or not achievable that you just like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure.
Do people come to you with ideas all the time, like hip hop artists? And
I mean, definitely. Okay. But usually, to be honest, it's more if I'm turning something down, it's because I can't look myself in the mirror and feel good about it, right? So, Walgreens one time approached us and offered us a lot of money because they were trying to ban cigarettes in Walgreens. I'm like, is that what I want to represent? Or when Juul came calling, that was a big issue last year, and they called multiple times. And, I even met, one of the first employees of Juul who I was super impressed by. I mean, she was so passionate, and she was telling me she's a single mom, and, she's never smoked a cigarette in her life and believes in the founders, and, this is going to do this or that. And I was kind of taken by her. And I remember going to talk to my 15-year-old son, who's a sophomore in high school. And I'm like, "You heard of Juul?" And he like rolls his eyes at me. He's like, "Dad, everyone does that, man, in my high school bathroom, And I'm like, what if I had like unlimited resources to curb youth smoking? Like, just imagine we could do whatever we wanted." And he was like, "I don't think it's possible, Dad." And like, that was like a wake up call of like, I wanted to do something bold and I believed in this woman, but I was like, at the end of the day, I don't want to be affiliated with that, And turns out, I was right, at least in my own opinion, now hearing like the unbelievable negative health impacts of e-cigarettes. But I mean, sometimes people come to me with kind of bold ideas, but usually it's just kind of quick and off the cuff. And I'll say, maybe you should do A, B, and C. And 9 times out of 10, they'll never go do A, B, and C. Right, so it's like, if you're serious, then I would do this. And then usually it kind of goes away from there. Yeah.
So you don't treat people like Ludacris.
No, but again, I was like waiting to see what you were talking about.
That was I know, and I sometimes I take a long time to get to the point when I'm building stories. So thank you for your.
But patience. That movie is unbelievable. So there you go. I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, like the I respect the fact that you didn't take on those clients, and last year. I heard about Juul throwing around tons of money everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And I've met people that work for the company, and I'm always like, oh, I think we passed a resolution at the school board in support of banning e-cigarettes locally, and I have my own history with Walgreens around like the security that they hire and how they racially profile, people that come into there was a story about me and the Examiner about that like last year. Yeah. So. But anyway, very interesting. So, Project Homeless Connect. Yeah. Let's get into that a little bit.
Sure.
What was the impetus behind? What is Project Homeless Connect for people that don't know?
So I mean, Gavin Newsom ran on Care Not Cash, right? Before he ran for mayor, which was basically taking away kind of cash subsidy and putting that into rent, essentially rent subsidy. And I mean, that was what.
I remember
17 years ago, 18 years ago. Yeah. And that was the issue of the day. I mean, hello, right? So obviously homelessness was front and center. And after the campaign, he made me his deputy chief of staff, and there I was in room 200. And I mean, I'll give him a lot of credit. He walked into my office like within the first couple of days, and he said, "You're going to be my point person on homelessness." And I'm like, I don't know anything about homelessness. Like, you've got, Trent Roars, the head of human services, $1 billion agency. You've got Barbara Garcia, public health, $2 billion agency, ton of experts and doctors. And he's like, yeah, no, I got that. He's like, but I need someone who's like my guy, who's close to me, who's going to think outside the box, who's going to like motivate and organize these people. And it really started with like getting, I think it was like 250 city employees out on the street. And we like broke it up into 5 little areas in the Tenderloin. And all we did was just bring services. Like, we had a few doctors, some nurses, some like hygiene kits, just like little things that we went out and surveyed folks on the street. And we like went out as this mass movement, and people just dug it so much that they were like, when are we doing this again? And can I bring my friend? And can I bring my partner? And the next thing you know, we're like doing it at Bill Graham Civic Auditorium, and like 2,000 volunteers are showing up. So it was, again, like I said at the beginning, it was really the first time I merged politics and organizing to social policy. And I was just like super engaged at that. Like, just recognizing that people wanted to do something to help, but they didn't really know where they fit in. It's such a complex issue. It's disturbing. It's sad. And no one knows what to do. So like being able to motivate them to come to this one place where they felt part of a bigger city family in doing something positive for people was kind of magical. I mean, 200 cities are doing it around the country, 3 different places around the world. But, we're now 17 years later, and while I'm super proud of it and I'm glad it's still around, it's not a solution. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a magical one day, but then it's tomorrow, right? So there are other strategies I'm certainly passionate about and trying to continue to work on to kind of turn the corner on this, because I do believe it is solvable. I really do. Not just in San Francisco. I mean, in the country, there's 500,000 homeless people, like in a country of 400 million people. Like, it's just got to be solvable if there's collective will. Yeah. I want to get into the solution, and obviously, like, as a part of this year, and we were talking a lot about this topic, and the general sentiment of the city is that it's going in the wrong direction. Nothing's being done, and there's this tension between political correctness and like a sentiment around being more aggressive. That's kind of like becoming more of the tone of the city around the conversation. And with the proliferation of needles on the street and feces on the street, and it's like, and obviously this affects our schools. And I get a lot of complaints from our custodial staff or other people that work at sites about seeing all this like near where they work, where our kids are. That's right.
And so, what is your? I know you have a lot of friends in a lot of places, right? But like, what is your assessment of the existing strategy, and what do you think the city can be doing more of?
So we're doing some work right now with Tipping Point.
Yeah, I'm having Dan on too.
Oh, right on. Yeah. I mean, he and his team, incredibly dedicated, smart, committed people. And Daniel and I have been having this conversation for multiple years. But they engaged us probably 6-8 months ago to help them with what's called their All In campaign, which is essentially around trying to create 1,100 units of supportive housing, but citywide, like enough of putting people in the Tenderloin or the Bayview. Like, that is just not a sustainable solution. And I will say I learned of a model through a guy that I used to work with when I was at the city. He's a guy named Mark Trotz, who was in the Department of Public Health, super smart. He worked for then Mitch Katz, who was the head of public health. He went with him when Mitch got the job in LA running public health. And they started a model down there called Brilliant Corners.
Okay.
That like once I kind of got my arms around it to really understand what it was, it made so much sense to me. And again, it's about how do you educate and motivate the public that there are solutions that work? Because there's so many different things happening that I don't think, to your point, like people are frustrated and they just don't know, is anything happening, right? That's positive, which of course there is, right? And Brilliant Corners is a model. Essentially, it says they're the connective tissue between the homeless individual and a landlord of an existing vacant unit. So in San Francisco, I mean, this report just came out a couple months ago. There's 38,000 vacant units in San Francisco. So the idea that we just need to build, like there's plenty of vacancy that exists where as long as the rent subsidy is there, the case management is there, the landlord is getting paid, a market rate rent on the first of the month, there's a 24-hour hotline, there's case management. There are plenty of people who have taken those few steps who are ready for some kind of self-sufficiency, which would then open up other slots, right? So it's actually a model I really believe can work. Tipping Point's putting some real skin in the game. We're raising resources from the philanthropic sector. Mayor Breed has really stepped up on the city prioritizing this vision. So I think you might start to see that needle move a little bit, but I mean, it's going to take some time. But I really think it's a model that can work and something I'm really passionate and inspired about.
Yeah. Is there a collective vision around a goal for what the streets should look like over a certain amount of time? Like we want to end this issue by this year, or we're trying to
I don't know that that's possible. And whenever people put timelines on it, I think it just sounds like more like a press hit, we're going to cut it in half by like this time.
Vision Zero type thing.
I believe in trying to have a goal. That certainly makes sense. But again, like I want to get back to doing what I think I do best, which is kind of organizing and motivating people. Because there's a lot. You saw what happened with the NAV Center on the Embarcadero, right? Hundreds of people came out, absolutely not. And like, you got to give the mayor a lot of props, man. I mean, she just shows up and is like, this is my community. I'm from San Francisco. We need to do this. So she's been bold and deserves a lot of credit for that. But I think what I would love to see is like, how do you go into neighborhoods like Western Addition, Sunset, Richmond, West Portal, where you're organizing people to say, hey, I would welcome someone in my neighborhood. So there's more of that like, yes, in my backyard versus just fighting anything that has to do with supportive housing in my neighborhood. I'd like to organize that broader community because I actually think there are plenty of people that if there was a vacant unit across the street on Linden that a landlord wanted to rent out and they were getting paid and it was a formerly homeless person who's got case management, I believe there are plenty of people who'd be like, I'm fine with that person living right across the street. But someone needs to organize those voices. Right.
Yeah, you can sign me up too for being a support and trying to have these conversations because what I see in the Western Addition is you got to be careful about like trying to sign people up. Or you're talking about landlords. I mean, like what I think about we have a ton of churches in the Western Addition whose memberships have dwindled, and they have these like large parking lots next to the to the parish, and I'm like. That seems like a site.
It's not the best use for such a big piece of property.
Right. And so what would it look like if, we involved them? And I was like, that's why I was saying being careful about signing them up because they may be against something like that. But it's like that list thing that we talked about, It's like if 100 of them are on the list, if you can make the calls, like, somebody's going to say yes on the list, So, I'm very excited about taking on a project like that because I think that, for what I understand about the faith community, that is a part of their work, and so like repurposing property to help solve this problem in this neighborhood, I think would be a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a multitude of strategies. There's no one silver bullet. Like I do believe, to your point, that we do need to build more, right? I mean, look, there is a supply and demand issue that's happening here, whether people want to believe that or not, right? I mean, there's just not enough places, right? So building is part of it. But again, I think there are so many vacant units where as long as people have the subsidy and the case management, they're ready, right? Because they've shown some level of success. Yeah. So I think it needs to be just, it's collective will, right? Just like tweaking at the edges isn't going to do it. And the city can't do it alone. So that's been the exciting thing of working with Tipping Point, is that they're pretty dialed into the philanthropic community, the corporate community, and being able to merge that with city leadership and the broader community. I think there's some there, but again, no simple solution to a complex problem.
Yeah. And I think that both because the building it's called Building Corners.
Brilliant Corners.
Brilliant Corners sounds great. And how close is that to being rolled out?
I mean, it's like
just started
really soon. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, again, we've been talking about it for quite a while, kind of getting organized. And, the reality is the resources need to be there, right? Because again, there are units available, and the staff at Brilliant Corners, they have what's called housing acquisition specialists. Like, this is what they do all day long, is like kind of back to the list. They're like cold calling folks and saying, like, if we were able to bring you the resources, would you be able to take someone on? Would you be willing? And there are plenty of people that are ready to go. You just need to make sure there's the resources for the rent subsidy.
Right.
And so, we just had a really successful meeting last week with, a bunch of potential donors. Again, Daniel and Tipping Point put some real money on the table. So I think our goal in 2020 is to, have enough resources to house about 330 people within this model. So at least that could show some there. And then really tell those stories of not just the homeless individual, but the landlord who says, like, hey, I was hesitant about this, but I'm glad I did it. I believe in this person. They've been a great tenant. I feel like I'm helping the city. Like, there just needs to be a broader communications program, I think, to get people excited about it. So I've got some big ideas. So we'll see if we can turn that into reality.
You occupy an interesting space in the city where, like, you are solving problems for big companies, and then on the ground trying to move forward these initiatives that are really, the most important issues that our city is facing today. Like, what are you? And housing is obviously an important issue our city is facing. Is there anything else that you would say, or like top level issues that you want to see movement on?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt transportation is another one. And I will say, Lyft has been our client for a long time, and they're a great client. What I've really found fascinating in the past couple years is it's almost like they're supporting, through their micro mobility efforts, like almost putting themselves out of business. Not really, but meaning I think they now have a vision of, if you live in the Excelsior, because they now have the bike share contract. So they bought Motivate, which was sponsored by Ford, if you remember the Ford Go bikes. So now they're all branded Lyft Bay Wheels, right? So they basically manage the entire bike share system in San Francisco. And I think they see a model where you could wake up in the Excelsior, get on your Lyft bike share, take that to Muni, take Muni Metro downtown, hop on a Lyft scooter and go to work, and you don't even need your car. And I think those strategies, being able to really push that along. The mayor this morning is talking about congestion pricing. So that's really got some legs all of a sudden, which other major cities have done across the world. I mean, traffic and congestion and pedestrian safety, those are serious issues, and so the work that we're doing with Lyft of kind of moving that agenda forward is something that's also kind of exciting to be a part of.
No, I definitely support congestion pricing, and I was a Lyft user. I mostly use Uber now, and I drive, and my dad is a Muni driver. And so he's been doing that for like 6 years. He was doing paratransit before. So I take Muni, and, for the way that my life kind of works and moves, getting around the city, a lot of our, like I have a car because a lot of my family left the city, and I think that's the case for a lot of Black families. And so we're kind of maneuvering out into Oakland or Berkeley or whatever, and those rideshare fees, they kind of get up there. And I remember the conversation that the city was having about this like general rejection of like the scooters, and the reason why I shared the sentiment is because it's felt like the city was being overrun, and I didn't see it coming. Like the same thing with like the when the bikes started coming and taking up spots, or like the red lanes came down Mission Street.
Definitely.
And so it seems like there's a lot of policy changes that are happening that are kind of sprung on us. I had a guy on. He owns Standard Deviant. You know that brewing company, Standard Deviant?
Yeah, it sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
His name is Mark, and they own he's affiliated with Ben Blyman, who's on the Arts Commission, and they do a lot of stuff. But Mark was talking about how the red bus lanes coming down Mission killed foot traffic to a lot of the vendors on Mission.
To the merchants, yeah.
He owns Dr. Teeth on Mission. I don't know if you know that spot.
Okay.
And so there are like these multiple facets of these issues that need to be teased out, right? A lot of the people that are using, or that are like drivers for these companies, are people of color, and they're finding work through these companies, and then the congestion is going up, and it seems like dang, like somebody's gonna be unhappy, based on whatever the outcome of these decisions are. Are there existing aspects of the city's transit policy when it comes to rideshare that you think the city can be doing better of?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm no expert, right? I mean, I will say, the MTA just hired a new director, Jeffrey Tumlin, and we actually brought in the CEO and president of Lyft to meet with him, and Anthony Fox, who was Obama's Secretary of Transportation, is now a vice president for Lyft. So he's a heavy hitter, and brought them in and had a really productive conversation with Jeffrey. And I must say, I was super impressed. I mean, just smart, engaging, willing to push, but really saw it as a partner. And I think this is it's a bit of the struggle about San Francisco from time to time, is there's kind of this us against them mentality that, I want to believe you can agree to disagree and you can battle during the day, but you can have a beer together at night. And there's not a lot of that here. And I think, so as much as Ed Reskin's a really nice guy, he was super responsive to me and thoughtful, he was, very antagonistic against Lyft and Uber, and it was hard to kind of move the ball collaboratively. And so, I do at least have hope that Jeffrey is at least open to, how do we tap into your experience and resources to make the city, a better place for safety and efficient transportation. So I'm hopeful. But yeah, these are complex issues. There's no doubt drivers are coming from outside of San Francisco and don't know where they're going and not following the rules. And those are real things, right? That I think the companies need to find a way to deal with. But the fact that there's an open door at the MTA, at least for right now, is a productive sign. Yeah.
And I'm happy that you all are being collaborative. I think that, part of the reason why I want to participate and do more with the city is because I think solutions have to involve all of our stakeholders, and being anti anything isn't necessarily the best solution to anything.
Totally agree.
Let's talk about hip hop before I let you get out of here.
Right on.
Yeah. So
that's easy enough.
Yeah. Big jump, big shift. So when I ran into you on the street, you were listening to Public Enemy.
That is true.
Which I didn't expect.
That is true. I think I even pulled off my earpiece and showed it to you.
So, I didn't grow up on Public Enemy, but I respect their legacy. Yeah. Who are your top 5 hip hop artists?
Well, again, I listen to pretty much old school hip hop. So I mean, I'm listening to Gangstar, De La Soul, Tribe,
Okay. I love
Far
Tribe.
Side, probably stuff like that. The interesting thing is my son is now super into music, and I'm actually quite impressed with his eclectic style. So he's introduced me to like Smino,
Yeah, I know that.
Somersault, like, Rex Orange County, like just really like kind of smooth R&B hip hop mix, just a lot of flavor to it. So it's been kind of a cool thing is being a father of a teenage son. Like half the time I get one word answers. You know what I mean? It's like, great, fine, whatever. And then when he does want to start talking, I have to temper my enthusiasm, because if I look like I'm too excited to talk to him, then it's not cool anymore. But one of the things that kind of opens up that dialogue is when he wants to talk about music. And it's actually nice when I think I was listening to Third Base last week again. Like I listen to 90s hip hop for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That's what I'm drawn to. And seeing him like kind of like what, lean in a little bit. What's that about? And talking about what I used to listen to, or showing him some other things. It's a nice connection between the two of us.
Are you like, do you go to shows? Do you do all that too? Or you just like listen to it on the go?
Yeah, I more listen to it.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'll go to like Outside Lands and stuff like that, like kind of bigger shows where you can see like all, different kinds of artists. But yeah, I mean, I should be going to more shows probably.
Yeah.
Kind of miss being out there, but I'm working, I'm raising a 15-year-old boy.
Right.
Time is limited,
Yeah. In respect to your time, I'm a close this out, and I always end the show talking about leadership and legacy. And so you've obviously had a lot of different phases of your career, and supported getting leaders in the office, and now lead a company. Do you have any guiding principles when it comes to leadership?
It's a great question. I mean, look, I think it's just probably the importance of authenticity and being communicative. What makes me most proud as a company owner is when we can represent a client's interest and the community interest at the same time, and kind of be the architect of that magic being made between the two. So if we're raising the brand of a client and then bringing really meaningful impact in a community, and those two entities are feeling really good about that marriage, and we're just the guys behind the scenes that are kind of making that magic happen, like, to me, that's leadership, right? And so it's not to be cliche, but I mean, it's just kind of bringing these diverse interests together and having a willingness to have a dialogue, to look people in the eye, to tell people the truth. Excuse me. I like to say a lot that I'm not the smartest guy in a room, but if you put 10 people in my conference room and we're trying to get somewhere, that I can lead those people to that result. And sometimes that's just knowing when to listen a little bit more, or when to bring out a little bit more in someone, and just being able to kind of meet people where they are. That most people want to do good things. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. But some people need direction and leadership, and I like to be in that role to make it happen.
Nice. And so legacy, you talked about your family, your mother and your son. I named my company after my great grandfather, Luther Harris. It's called the Luther Harris Holding Company.
Nice.
He came to San Francisco in the 1940s, bought a house on Oak Street, came here with a 6th grade education, and went out to buy homes for all of his children. He worked for Muni for a time too. Wow. He did that at a time in the country. It was very hard for Black people to do much of anything. So his legacy is important to me. This is his dictionary.
Wow, that's awesome.
And this is his wife's chairs. This is my great grandmother's chairs.
Right on. Honor to sit on. It's awesome.
Yeah. How do you think about legacy? How do you think in general, and how do you think about your legacy?
I mean, I can't say I think too much about it. I mean, I'd like to think I'm a relatively young man, so I still got a lot of work to do. But again, at the end of the day, most people aren't going to remember the, individual clients or how many years I, was a business owner or any of those things. It's those issues like homelessness or transit or, like something that I can look back on that I really helped move the needle that made the city a better place or the region or the state. Like that's still what drives me is, I'm an ambitious owner of a company. I want to grow my company, right? I want to take care of my son and my stepkids and, but again, like I want to work on like system changing type initiatives and, like this all in initiative. I wish I could spend 10 hours a day on it, but I have 26 clients, right? And they all need some part of me. So there's only so many hours in a day. So I guess I'd love to find a way where I'm working on less projects that have tremendous resources behind it so I can really dedicate more time to those things that are moving the needle on things that I'm passionate about. So I hope that's a legacy 20, 30 years down the road that I've actually helped move the needle and change some systems along the way.
I believe you will.
Right on.
Thank you, Alex.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. Peace. And thank you for listening to another episode of Cook on Monday Morning. At Cook on Monday Morning, we believe that if you own Monday morning, you can own the week. If you own the week, you can own the year. And if you change your year, you can change your life. I'd like to thank Alex Tourk for coming in to talk about his journey, the work that he does in San Francisco politics and finding solutions for the clients that he supports between, public and private partnerships. It's been, really an honor to get to know Alex over the last several years. I think he is really committed to creating a better San Francisco, and learning more about how he got into his work today, I thought was very informative and hopefully inspiring for people looking to do some similar work in whatever cities that they are operating out of. I'd like to thank all the people that made this podcast possible. I'd like to thank David Topete, my videographer and producer. Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank Fernando Sino Marquez for the editing that he does of the newsletter. I appreciate you, sir. And I'd like to thank all of you that have been sharing, subscribing, and talking about Cook on Monday Morning to your friends and loved ones. We have been on this journey to get to 2020 subscribers by April 30th of 2020. That is growing every week because of you. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate the feedback you're giving me. If you would like to reach out to me, you can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Steven Cook. I'm also officially back on Instagram. It's at Steven Cook on Instagram as well. If you want to email me about anything related to the show, please do so. My email address is info@stevencook.com. And I'd love to hear about your suggestions, ideas, your feedback, whatever you want to talk about. I also want to thank and acknowledge the people that make San Francisco the great city that it is. It's beautiful and it's amazing, and it gets to where it's going on time because of you. You are our first responders, our firefighters, our MTA workers, people that keep our city safe. You are our community drivers, our teachers, our school lunch workers, our custodial staff, the people that collect our trash, the people that are doing the hard work of engaging our most vulnerable populations in my community in Hayes Valley and the city at large. Thank you. This podcast is for you. I'm your biggest fan, and I commend you for the work that you do. I also like to just acknowledge all the people in cities across the country that have been taking on this important self-work of improving how they feel about their community and taking on and owning Monday morning. They are in cities like Oakland, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, Detroit, Cincinnati, Cleveland. All of you, everywhere, looking to build and improve your community. I commend you. I want to hear from you. Talk about the solutions that you're trying to bring to your neighborhoods, to your cities, and collectively we can make our country a better place. So thank you. Peace, and we out.